What's up, everybody? Ron Harris here. Remember, if you like this video, hit that like button. With the Mr. Olympia contest coming up very, very soon, I thought it was only right to remind people just how often the Mr. Olympia title has been changing hands. In the last 8 years, we have had seven, count them, 7 different Mr. Olympia champions, which means we haven't had anybody dominant in quite a long time, winning multiple titles. So let's take a look at the 2017 champion. This was Phil Heath in his final Mr. Olympia win, 7 in a row, equaling the total of 7 won previously by Arnold Schwarzenegger, just 1 win shy of tying both Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman for 8 wins. Shortly after this, Phil did get a hernia, which affected his ability to control his midsection, and he would eventually lose the title just a year later. But in the meantime, he was a very dominant champion. When he came out, most of the time, it was lights out, game over for everybody else. He was an incredible champion. Phil used to say, you guys are going to miss me when I'm gone, because he did get a fair amount of hate from the fans. And you know what? Phil was right. I do miss Phil Heath. He had an incredible combination of size, shape, and muscle detail, separation. That's one thing that really separated him from the rest of the pack. There were guys that were bigger than Phil. There were guys that were sometimes as conditioned, maybe even more conditioned at times than Phil. Rarely. But nobody put it all together quite the way Phil did. He also improved body parts very rapidly from the time he turned pro. When he turned pro, his chest and back were not strong points on his physique. In fact, he was all limbs. He was arm dominant, shoulder dominant, quad dominant. As the years went by, very quickly, working with Coach Honey Rambod, he was able to bring those areas up and eventually dominated the Mr. Olympia title for 7 years in a row. Phil Heath was an incredible champion, dearly missed. We'll never see him come back. I'm certain of that at this point. But the Gift, as he was known, did bring something very special to the Mr. Olympia stage for the better part of a decade. His early battles against Jay Cutler were legendary, and then his title defense is also incredible. So that was a 2017 Mr. Olympia, 8 years ago. Following him was Flexatron, Shawn Rhoden. Very few people saw this win coming. I'll tell you that. I sure didn't. In 2015, he had been 3rd. In 2016, he was all the way to runner-up spot, 2nd place. And the year prior to this, 2017, when Phil won his final title, 5th place for Shawn. But this year, he brought an incredible package, beautiful shape, symmetry, balance, proportions, flow, all those good things. I'm sorry the footage is so dark. The lighting at the Olympia that year in the finals was very dark. It did not do any favors to the guys with darker complexions. I can tell you he looked a lot better than what you're seeing right here. But Shawn Rhoden, unfortunately, never got the chance to defend his title. And in fact, this was Shawn's final contest. He never competed again after this. Unfortunately, he got caught up in an accusation after this, a sexual assault accusation. Never had the opportunity to go to court and plead his case. The pandemic slowed down the juries and the justice system and all that, the courts. Never got the chance and unfortunately passed away prematurely a couple years later. Shawn was the oldest man to win the Mr. Olympia title. I believe he was 44 years old. In any case, he was definitely the oldest man to ever win the Mr. Olympia title. But as you can see, he looked fantastic, didn't look like a man in his 40s. This was his prime. This was the best he ever looked. He was an incredible champion, dearly missed. And again, a shame he never had the opportunity to even once defend that Mr. Olympia title. Many felt he had a very good chance of winning it at least one more time. But of course, we'll never get that chance to see that ever again. The following year would be the rise of Brandon Curry. So Brandon had a good first Olympia back in 2011 with 8th place. But then in 2013, 15, and 16, 3 Olympias in a row that he competed in, he did not place. He did come back in 2018, the year before this, the year that Rhoden won and got 5th place. 2017, he had been 8th place. But here he was the champ, the undisputed champ. Brandon had just beautiful, full, bubbly muscles, very round, full arms, delts, chest, back. The only area that people used to criticize was his legs, his quads in particular. And remember, Brandon's still competing. And until last year, 2024, he hadn't been out of the top 5 since he'd won the show. So Brandon Curry, still a very, very formidable competitor at 42 years old, I believe he is right now. He's in his 40s, still looking great, preparing for the shows in his home state of Tennessee instead of going over to Kuwait as he did for many, many years. But definitely Brandon Curry was someone in his early pro career. Very, very few of us predicted he was ever going to be Mr. Olympia. I certainly never saw it coming. In fact, there was even talk earlier in his career that he should drop down to 212, even though he was competing somewhere around 230 pounds at the time. People didn't think he had what it took to be a great open bodybuilder and to ever become Mr. Olympia. Of course, Brandon proved them all wrong. He looked fantastic and still does. He hasn't lost much from what you're seeing here. So this was his Olympia win back in 2019. This was 6 years ago. Maybe lost a tiny, tiny bit of fullness, but not much. For a guy his age who's been at it as long as he is, he's still holding up incredibly well. So that was your 2019 Mr. Olympia. That was 3 titles in 3 years, three different winners in 3 years. 2020 is when we finally saw the rise of Big Ramy, who had made a very auspicious pro debut back in 2013 at the New York Pro. I was privileged enough to be there when he did his pro debut at the New York Pro, a very, very tough lineup, and beat a lot of heavy favorites, guys like Victor Martinez, Juan Morel, John De La Rosa was in that show. There were some excellent guys in that top 5, and he conquered them all. Now, we were hoping that he would win the Olympia a little sooner than he did. It took a few years, and ironically, it was only after he left the so-called Camel Crew at Oxygen Gym in Kuwait and hired Chad Nichols to be his coach that he finally won the Olympia. Another interesting fact about his first Mr. Olympia win is he did not qualify for that Mr. Olympia. He was there on a special invitation because he was supposed to compete at the Europa Pro in Alicante, Spain, a few weeks before, which was, I believe, that year's final qualifier for the Mr. Olympia. But this was 2020, and there were COVID tests for all the athletes while they were, as soon as they showed up for the contest to register. He failed his COVID test. I should say he tested positive for COVID-19, was not allowed to compete, did ask for a special invitation. They granted it to him, and the rest is history. Of all these guys that I'm naming, since Shawn won in 2018, he is the only one that's won the Mr. Olympia more than one time. He won it in 2020 and 2021. And, this is a guy that we were waiting years for him to become Mr. Olympia. The minute he hit that pro stage, New York Pro, we had people talking about him, Mr. Olympia champion, a future Mr. Olympia. And we thought it was going to be very, very soon. Now, 7 years isn't a terribly long time in the span of things, but we all thought it was going to happen a little sooner. But you know what? Better late than never. He did drop down to 5th place when he came back to Olympia again in 2022. He did the 2023 Arnold Classic, looked much better, and has not been seen on stage since. Don't know if we're ever going to see Ramy on stage again, but if we didn't, he's got 2 Mr. Olympia titles, millions of fans around the world, and certainly nothing to be ashamed of. Next up, the next champion we have is in 2022, our next new champion. This was Hadi Choopan from Iran. Hadi is a one-time Olympia champion so far. He will be competing in 2 weeks at the Mr. Olympia again, trying to recapture that title. He is also the 2024 Arnold Classic Columbus, Ohio champ and 2024 Arnold UK champ. At both of those shows, he beat Samson Dauda, who would go on to beat him that fall of 2024 last year at the Mr. Olympia. Hadi is in the USA now. He's training with his employer and former coach and maybe still coach. We're talking about Hani Rambod. And he's one of the favorites. We talk about who could win the Mr. Olympia this year, and I think I have at least four men in my head that could win the Olympia. Hadi could win it again. I don't see why not. Derek Lunsford could win it again. Samson could hold the title. And, of course, we have Nick Walker looking phenomenal right now. It would be crazy to say that Nick can't win the Olympia. Anything's possible. All different types of physiques over the 61-year history of the Mr. Olympia. Well, actually, last year was 60 years. All different types of physiques have won the Mr. Olympia. We've had more streamlined, symmetrical physiques, even in recent years, like Shawn Rhoden, who fits more along the lines of what would consider a classic physique now. And we've also had Herculean mass monsters like Big Ramy win. Of course, Hadi and Derek would be considered massive guys. Then you have Samson, who's kind of a blend of the two. But Hadi Choopan from Iran, excellent champion, and looking to win that Mr. Olympia title again this year. Okay, so the title changed hands again in 2023 when we had Derek Lunsford, the kid from Indiana, took the title. Derek had turned pro back in 2017 at the USA Championships. I was there, and he won his pro debut exactly 1 week later at the Tampa Pro as a 212. Won the 212 Mr. Olympia title, and then outgrew the 212 division. And we all remember that guest posing in Pittsburgh back in 2022, where Derek showed up at about 260 pounds, looking so much larger than we'd ever seen him before. And the speculation immediately began after that May 2022 guest posing that he was going to be moving to Open. And he did ask for an invitation for that year's Mr. Olympia, and he got it. And that was 2022, where he would take second place, runner-up at his very first Mr. Olympia to Hadi Choopan. And then in 2023, he turned the tables on Hadi and beat him. So Derek is, again, another guy who's competing just in a couple weeks here, again, going for the Mr. Olympia title. He is the current Arnold Classic champion. He won that earlier in the year, along with the inaugural Pittsburgh Pro title, narrowly edging out Nick Walker by a 1-point decision in a sudden death round match where they posed down. But he's still a favorite. He's still someone who's more than capable of winning the Mr. Olympia. Do not doubt him for 1 minute. And last but not least, our seventh man in the past 8 years to win the Mr. Olympia title is the UK's own Samson Dauda. Samson won it last year. He's a heavy favorite to win it this year. We saw him guest pose a few weeks ago, looking ahead of schedule from what we've seen in terms of condition. And condition is the one thing that Samson Dauda has been criticized for. Even here at his Mr. Olympia win last year, people were saying, of course, he could have been sharper. He could have been harder. He looked fantastic, but we all want to see that extra level of condition from Samson, along with this great combination of size, shape, structure that he has. Beautiful physique, very skillful, beautiful poser. He's won best poser at more than one show in the past. And we want to see this guy. We want to see this guy like we've never seen him before, just inside out peeled, looking fantastic the way we know he can. As of now, he is the favorite to win. But again, as I said, it's a pretty open show. We have 4 men who I think have a great chance. And we even have another Mr. Olympia competing, Brandon Curry. I don't see Brandon ever recapturing the title, but the fact that he's still up there and still hanging with these much younger guys who are much newer in the game, much respect to Brandon Curry. And of course, Samson Dauda, much respect to him for daring to do the Arnold Classic while he was reigning Mr. Olympia. He took a chance, took a gamble, and it didn't quite pan out the way he wanted. He didn't get the win. He didn't get that $500,000 check, but he's going to be going for a much bigger check. It's going to be at least $600,000. My prediction is it's probably going to be $750,000 this year for first place in Olympia. I believe in my heart of hearts, that's what the check is going to say when they flip it around at the end of the night. Samson could be the guy to pick up that massive payday. And then who's to say we won't see him at the Arnold Classic next March going for another $750,000. Just a couple quick trivia facts before we go. In the first 43 years of the Mr. Olympia contest from 1965 to 2008, there were only 3 one-time champions. We had many other multiple champions. Of course, Larry Scott won it a couple times. Sergio Oliva, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Colombo, Frank Zane. We didn't have the long reigns until we got to Lee Haney with 8. Dorian Yates had 6, and Ronnie Coleman had 8. Phil Heath 7. But again, in this past 8 years, we've seen the title change hands 7 different times, which means there are no guarantees. These are the people in the history of the Mr. Olympia. These are all the men who won it just once. Chris Dickerson, Samir Bannout, Dexter Jackson, Brandon Curry, Shawn Rhoden, Hadi Choopan, Derek Lunsford, and Samson Dauda. So it's going to be a very exciting show. Will the Olympia title change hands again, or will Samson Dauda keep it and be one of those multiple champions that we've talked about? Remains to be seen, guys. We'll find out very, very soon. Keep it tuned here. I'll be covering all the action on the Ron Harris Muscle channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.